Finding meaning in suffering, the path to survival and growth. The human condition is inextricably tied to suffering. From physical pain to emotional distress, loss, and adversity, suffering is a universal experience. Yet, as philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche famously said, to live is to suffer, to survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. This idea, that while suffering is inevitable, it is our response to it that shapes our lives, is central to understanding human resilience, growth, and survival. The ability to find meaning in suffering transforms it from an obstacle to an opportunity, offering individuals a way not just to endure hardship but to thrive in spite of it. This concept of finding meaning in suffering has been explored by philosophers, psychologists, and theologians alike. It speaks to the core of human experience and has practical applications in both personal development and broader societal contexts. By examining historical examples, modern psychological theories, and individual anecdotes, we can see how meaning-making is a powerful tool for navigating life's inevitable difficulties. Suffering is not something that can be avoided, it is part of the human experience. From the earliest moments of life, we are confronted with challenges. Infants cry out in distress, children experience fear and disappointment, and adults encounter illness, failure, and loss. Suffering takes many forms: physical pain, emotional heartache, psychological distress, and it touches everyone, regardless of background or status. In Buddhism, suffering is seen as one of the fundamental truths of existence. The first noble truth, dukkha, acknowledges that life is filled with suffering, and this suffering arises from desire, attachment, and impermanence. In this view, suffering is not something that happens to a select few, but a universal experience that all beings share. However, Buddhism also teaches that by understanding the nature of suffering and responding to it mindfully, one can find peace and liberation. Similarly, in Christianity, suffering is often viewed as a test of faith and a way to grow closer to God. The story of Job in the Bible illustrates this perspective. Job, a righteous man, endures unimaginable suffering. He loses his wealth, his family, and his health. But he continues to seek meaning in his suffering, ultimately reaffirming his faith in God's wisdom. While his suffering is never fully explained, Job's perseverance and search for meaning allow him to transcend his pain and find spiritual growth. Perhaps no one has articulated the idea of finding meaning in suffering more powerfully than Viktor Frankl, an Austrian neurologist, psychiatrist, and Holocaust survivor. Frankl's experiences in Nazi concentration camps during World War II, where he lost his family and endured unimaginable suffering, led him to develop a psychological theory known as logotherapy, which centers on the human search for meaning. In his influential book, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl writes, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." Frankl observed that even in the darkest of conditions, individuals who found meaning in their suffering, whether through faith, hope, or the desire to help others, were more likely to survive and maintain their humanity. For Frankl, the key to survival was not the avoidance of suffering but the ability to find purpose in it. He believed that life's meaning could be discovered even in the worst situations, and that this sense of purpose gave individuals the strength to endure. Frankl's ideas are supported by modern psychological research. Studies show that individuals who find meaning in their lives tend to have better mental health and greater resilience. A study published in the Journal of Positive Psychology in 2016 found that meaning in life is associated with lower levels of depression, anxiety, and stress. Moreover, people who perceive their lives as meaningful report higher levels of overall well-being and life satisfaction. In short, finding meaning in suffering is not just a philosophical concept, it has practical benefits for mental and emotional health. History offers numerous examples of individuals who have found meaning in their suffering and, as a result, have been able to inspire others. Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison for his efforts to end apartheid in South Africa, is one such figure. Rather than becoming embittered by his suffering, Mandela found meaning in his struggle for justice. His time in prison deepened his commitment to reconciliation and peace, and upon his release, he worked tirelessly to bring about a peaceful transition to democracy in South Africa. Mandela's ability to find purpose in his suffering allowed him to become a symbol of hope and resilience for millions around the world. Another powerful example is Malala Yousafzai, the Pakistani activist who survived an assassination attempt by the Taliban at the age of 15 for her advocacy of girls' education. Rather than retreating into fear, Malala found meaning in her suffering by using her platform to continue her fight for the rights of girls worldwide. She became the youngest ever recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize and remains an influential voice for education and human rights. Malala's ability to transform her personal suffering into a global movement for justice demonstrates the profound impact that meaning-making can have, not only on the individual but on the world. On a personal level, finding meaning in suffering is essential for resilience, the ability to bounce back from adversity. When people face challenges such as illness, loss, or trauma, those who are able to find meaning in their experiences tend to recover more quickly and with greater emotional strength. This is because meaning provides a sense of purpose, direction, and hope, even in the midst of hardship. In practical terms, finding meaning in suffering can take many forms. For some, it may be a spiritual or religious belief that gives them comfort and strength. For others, it may be the desire to help others or contribute to a cause larger than themselves. In some cases, meaning can be found through personal growth, using suffering as an opportunity to learn more about oneself, develop new skills, or strengthen relationships. One common thread among those who find meaning in suffering is the ability to reframe their experiences. Rather than seeing suffering as something purely negative, they view it as an opportunity for transformation. This mindset shift, from victimhood to agency, is key to resilience. As the psychologist Carol Dweck has shown in her research on growth mindset, individuals who believe that challenges and setbacks are opportunities for learning and growth tend to be more successful and resilient in the long run. Suffering is an unavoidable part of life, but how we respond to it determines whether it becomes a source of despair or an opportunity for growth. As Nietzsche suggested, to live is to suffer, but to survive is to find meaning in that suffering. By embracing this perspective, individuals can transform their pain into purpose, their hardships into opportunities for growth, and their struggles into sources of strength. Whether through spiritual belief, personal growth, or the desire to help others, finding meaning in suffering allows us to rise above adversity and create a life of purpose. As Viktor Frankl demonstrated through his work and life, meaning is not something that happens to us, it is something we create, even in the face of the most difficult circumstances. In this way, finding meaning in suffering is not just about survival, it is about thriving, becoming more fully human, and contributing to the world in a deeper and more meaningful way.